Today is Thursday, Parashat Yitro. The parasha of this week includes in it the Ten Commandments. Yesterday we spoke about the first commandment. We'll go now into the next commandments. The second commandment is Lo Yelecha Elohim Acherim Al Panai, which is the commandment that forbids us to own Avodah Zarah, to believe. Avodah Zarah meaning idolatry, either to possess or to believe or to do any of the actions that would be considered to be worshipping the idol. And even if it's something that is done that typically is disrespectful, but if that idol is worshipped that way, that will be also forbidden to do. For instance, there is a type of idol that is worshipped by throwing stones on it. You would think that throwing a stone is something disrespectful, but since that's the way that that idol is being worshipped, then throwing stones at it would be also forbidden. And there could be all sorts of situations, even nowadays, where of course idol worshipping is not very common, but there are sometimes statues that belong to certain types of tribes or certain cultures that are still being worshipped. Some of the Far East still have statues and all sorts of idol worshipping, that those would be, of course, forbidden to own or to have in your possession. And that would belong in this category of the second commandment, not to have an other god, in other words, idol, either to own it, worship it, or do any of the activities that would be considered to be idol worship. The third commandment is Lo Tisa et Shem Adonai Elohecha Lashav, not to swear in vain, not to use the name of Hashem in vain. And it could be even taking an oath that, let's say, a table is made of wood, and you swear that it's made of wood. It was not a lie. It was a true statement. But it was the use of the name of God in a way that is not necessary, that it's in vain. That would be also asur. It's not just swearing as a lie. It's any use of the name of Hashem in a way that is not really needed for a specific situation, like saying a pasuk, or reading from the Torah, or saying a pasuk of Tehillim, or in certain rare situations where a bedin, a Jewish court of law, would obligate somebody to take an oath using the name of Hashem, then that would be allowed. But sometimes people in business or in trying to convince another person that they're saying a true statement, they would say, I swear to, and saying the name of God. That would be asur, not just to be taken lightly as something that is, oh, maybe it's not a nice thing to do. It's one of the 10 commandments. It's the third commandment of the 10 commandments, not to use the name of Hashem in vain, even when it's true, the statement you're making. The next commandment is Shabbat. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekaddesho. To remember Shabbat, to sanctify it. Actually, in this parasha it says Zachor. Next time that the 10 commandments I mentioned in the Torah isn't Parashat Vayetchanan, it says there Shamor. So both aspects are important on Shabbat. Here Zachor is the aspect of remembering Shabbat through Kiddush, through nice meals, getting dressed not like the rest of the week, honoring the Shabbat and remembering it, that's Zachor. Shamor is to refrain from doing anything that is forbidden on Shabbat, like cooking or turning on the light or driving, etc. All these things are not permitted to do on Shabbat. That's the aspect of Shamor. And as you notice, these first 4 commandments, which are organized in the first column, are all between man and Hashem. The 5th one is Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha le'ma'an ya'arichun yamecha al adama. So the 5th one is to honor your father and mother. We would think that it's something between man and his fellow man, because his parents are people also. But this mitzvah, this commandment, is part of the column between you and Hashem, because really there are 3 partners in a person. His father, his mother, and Hashem. His father and mother give the physical aspect, and Hashem gives the spirit and life. And in these three partners, if you disrespect your parents, you don't show honor to your parents, it's as also Hashem, who's partner in that partnership, creating the person, in a way is not being respected either. And therefore, it's in the category as the final one in the column between man and Hashem before we go into the next column, which has to do between man and his fellow man. The sixth commandment is lo tirtzach, which means do not murder. Do not murder a person. That's something that is the fifth commandment, but it's not just about murdering, because, in other words, taking the life of someone. Our Hachamim say that all the mitzvot of the Torah are subcategories of these 10 commandments, and there are other aspects that would be forbidden as a subcategory of this do not murder. For instance, embarrassing somebody in public, that would be like if you murdered him. There will be other situations. Let's say you don't provide food or safety for a traveler. You could have caused him to lose his life, or not helping somebody who's in danger, or causing somebody to lose his livelihood. These are also all under this heading of lo tirtzach. Of course, do not murder as an actual taking the life of somebody has very major implication in terms of the punishment for it, etc. But there are other aspects that also a person should be careful with as part of this general idea of do not murder. Then the seventh commandment is lo tin'af, do not commit adultery. The basic forbidden here is not to have relations with a woman who's married, but also there are also other ideas that could go under this heading, that a person that doesn't show respect for another person's rights, that also is something that would be similar. Then the eighth commandment is lo tignov, do not steal. And our sages explain that this specific commandment, the Ten Commandments, refer to kidnapping someone, to stealing a person, and to force the victim to work, and then to sell him into slavery. That's lo tignov. But of course, under this heading will be all sorts of stealing that are not necessarily stealing a person, and that also will be under that. Then that was the eighth commandment. The seventh was the eighth commandment was not to steal, and the ninth commandment is lo ta'aneh bere'acha et shaker, do not bear false witness. In other words, not to give false testimony against someone. That would be something that is forbidden as the ninth commandment. But also situations, you trust somebody fully, but in Judaism we need two witnesses, not just one. And a person asks you, come join me so I'm telling you this happened, so that way we can give testimony. That will be bearing false witness because you didn't see it. Even if you trust that it happened, but you have to witness the item or the thing being done to be able to give testimony. And finally, the 10th commandment is lo tachmod, do not covet. Do not be jealous and saying why that person has this or that. It should be mine rather than his. That would be something that would be forbidden. Now, what is interesting is the way that the Ten Commandments are organized, is they're parallel. The first commandment was to have faith in Hashem. The fifth one, which is parallel to the first one, is lo tirtzach, do not murder. If you don't have faith in Hashem as the creator of the world, then life doesn't have as much importance. But when you have faith that Hashem created every person, then lo tirtzach is parallel to that. You will not murder. And the second commandment was lo yelecha Elohim acherim al panai, shouldn't have another God, meaning not to have idols, not to worship idols. And parallel to it was lo tin'af, do not commit adultery, which is parallel to the idea of another God. Then the third commandment was lo tisa et shem Elokecha lashav, do not use the name of Hashem in vain. Parallel to it is lo tignov, don't steal, because if you steal, you might come to swear. Because there's situations in Bittan that you're brought to take an oath. So you'll come to take an oath. And that is connected to Lo Tignov, do not steal. Then we have the fourth is Zachor et Yom HaShabbat. Parallel to it, the ninth commandment is not to bear false witness. Because when you observe Shabbat, you're really giving testimony that Hashem created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. So parallel to it is the idea of not to bear false witness. And finally, Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha parallels to not to covet, lo tachmod. Because your father and mother is really, every person has a father and a mother. And that's what belongs to you, or you belong to them. When a person covets or is jealous, he wants the thing that belongs to another person to be to him. So there is a parallel there, and that's how the Ten Commandments parallel each other. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.